Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to because we get to look at the most fundamental relationship in our lives, the one we have with learning, and realize its foundation lies in our love for learning. Our guest today is the executive director of the Stanford Accelerator for Learning, meaning she sits at the epicenter of what's next in human development and learning. She has led philanthropic work in global education and now is a phenomenal author. Her book, Love to Learn: The Transformative Power of Care and Connection in Early Education, serves as the ultimate learning accelerator. She's been nominated and awarded as one of the top 100 most innovative women by Harvard Business School. Please join me in giving a huge welcome to the incredible Dr. Isabelle Hau.
Thank you, Seerat, for having me, and such a joy to meet you at Can Labs a few weeks ago.
Yes. You've openly shared about your early childhood and that you were a late walker and a late talker. And that with your amazing childhood and supportive parents and family, you were able to overcome these challenges. So, how did this experience influence how you view love and learning?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. So yeah, when I was 3 years old, I was late everything, as you mentioned, Seerat. So my parents naturally had me take an evaluation. And the evaluation, the psychological test came back and said that I had low academic aptitude. Not exactly what parents want to hear when their child is 3 years old. So they did what my parents do all the time. They continued showering me with a lot of love and a lot of attention. And they also enrolled me in a beautiful, high quality early childhood program where I was nurtured for my special needs and also supported in my earliest years of life. So that experience, both the love of my parent as well as the nurture of my early childhood educators, I believe would make a transformational difference. I would end up graduating many years after that from Harvard University and now working at Stanford. So the low academic aptitude is well in my past, but that led me on a journey to think about what makes a difference, what can be transformational for each and every child. And I strongly believe that if we start early and if we really think more deeply about the role of love and relationships in the early years, we can really transform many more lives and put those children on two beautiful trajectories.
You were given, like, you had very supportive parents, and they didn't just give up on you at 3 years old, but they continued to shower you with the love, and then now you've graduated from Harvard. I think that really emphasizes the importance of like good parents and good relationships, and as well, same for good like teachers when you're in preschool because they make or break how you enjoy school later on. So, can you explain what's happening in a child's brain scientifically when they feel securely attached and loved? And then how does that emotional state literally create better learning outcomes?
Yes, yeah, then let me come back to that in 1 second and just to make a small comment on your observation about teachers. Teachers, so it's not only my very own experience, but it's been now over and over again by many researchers that a teacher-child relationship is one of the greatest predictors of later academic success and life success. And there is something that I find very interesting and important to report, which is sometimes when we think about love and relationships, we often think about being love and relationship being soft factors, when in fact they are critical. And let me pick on one area, which is reading. We know that the closeness of a teacher and a child is one of the greatest predictors of reading outcomes. It can make a huge difference in reading and literacy. So when we think about academic success, it's actually driven by those clear, those loving, nurturing relationships. But let me also tackle your question about the brain. When we as a human species are born, we are born with billions of neurons in our brains. But different from a lot of other animal species, those neurons need to be connected with each other to help us walk, to help us speak, to help us feed ourselves over time. All these normal functions and many more. The connection between those neurons happens through one essential factor, which is human interactions. So that's what my colleague and scientist Jack Shonkoff at Harvard calls the serve and return interactions. These connections that a baby makes with an adult generally or another peer. It's through those signals, whether they are speech-based, whether this is a cuddle, whether this is a touch, whether this is a sound. That's how the baby synaptic connections in the brain take place. And so thus the essential nature of these relationships, and certainly in the earliest years of life when 90% of our brain gets formed.
I see. Thank you for adding more on the teacher's part. And that reminded me, like, teachers, when we ask our teachers, like, why did you choose to teach this subject? They're always like, oh, because I had a really good teacher in the subject, or this teacher influenced me to do this, or really showed me that I am really good at this, or I have the potential to do something even better than what I'm doing. So I think it's always like the teacher is like the inspiration for what they do next. And then for the like how the brain works when you're doing or like when you have good relationships, you mentioned that when like, the neurons in your brain are what allow you to like function as a human, and when you have good strong relationships, the neurons are also stronger. Is that right?
Exactly. You have more and more of those trillions of synaptic connections that take place much faster if you have more and more serve and return interactions.
Okay, and then I'm guessing that if the neurons are working faster, you're learning faster.
Exactly. So the more synaptic connections are taking place, the greater brain activity there is, and obviously the greater sense of learning, the greater learning can occur. Mm-hmm.
It's really cool. And then in your book, you discussed the science of brain and how stress or like lack of security can literally hijack the executive functions needed for learning. So for the youth listening, how can we apply the brain science of secure attachment to create an environment of learning and innovating?
Yeah, so that's a critical factor. So this is also very intuitive for any of the listeners here. If we don't feel safe or if we feel more unsettled one day, we tend as human beings to be less receptive to learning. We tend to be less curious. We tend to be less creative, less open to new learning. So having this safe environment that's produced by having those nurturing, loving relationships is critical for us humans to be able to be at our fullest capacity to learn.
Got it. So you said that we need that when we don't feel like safe or we don't feel like we can ask the questions without being like judged for, we're less likely to be curious and we're less likely to be like receptive to the learning. And I think I've noticed this too, like in the classes where I feel more comfortable, I'm more likely to ask a question or be more engaged. But then the classes where I'm like, I don't think I really fit in or I don't really like this teacher, I'm not really gonna be engaged.
Exactly. There is actually some really interesting research that I'm sharing in the book on adults who have experienced trauma in their life. Okay, so the most extreme conditions of stress, of course, trauma. For those adults, what has been shown is those adults are able to show this capacity to learn and thrive and greater well-being if they are in situations where they are surrounded by loving relationships. So the beautiful thing for all of us humans is also our capacity to react and adjust from those traumatic situations over time if we are surrounded by nurturing people in our lives. So the sense of safety can be broken at one point, but the positive message here is that it can actually be repaired in most instances. Not always easy, but science shows that there are positive events, including nurturing relationships, that can really support our capacity to repair any of those unsafe conditions at one point in our past.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense because like after someone goes through like a traumatic experience, they always go to a therapist because they're like they can help me, they're nurturing. So I think we see that also. And then I wanted to follow up on the previous question. As a teen, how much power do I have to control the environment? Like I cannot control how the teacher is or the environment in the space. So what can I do?
Such an interesting question. I think there's probably more in your control than we think. So of course there are some things that are not in your control, but there are some things that are in your control. One is how you're showing up in those relationships matters a lot, whether it's for your building friendships around you or interacting with other adults. It could be a teacher, it could be a family member, it could be a coach. The more open you are in those relationships, the more likely the other person will also be reactive to that positivity that you exhibit. Anything that you can do to be positively inclined, always just if you show up grumpy and the adult may be able to be receptive to that, a little bit tougher if you're showing up with a big smile and the willingness to engage, much easier for the adult or the friend to positively, be receptive. The other thing is, and we are in the holiday season, so let me mention the importance of gratitude. Being grateful is actually something that not only obviously benefits the other, but also benefits yourself. Giving a little gift or coming with and again, it could be not monetary necessarily, but a little gift of time, a little gift of a smile, a little gift of a compliment. All of those make a huge difference for the recipient, and those are in your control.
Yeah, I think they say what you celebrate gets repeated. So I think that's why gratitude's important. And then for your other point, I agree with you. If you can't control the environment or how the other person is, you can at least like control how you show up. So instead of being all closed and I don't want to talk, at least like having a smile and being willing to at least try to talk, be
Exactly,
engaged.
exactly. And Seerat, you're modeling this. So.
Yeah, I think you are. So, whenever we hear like the word love and care, I think we automatically think of being nice for the sake of it or like toxic positivity. So, how do you define love and care, especially in a like learning environment?
Yeah, so I define love based on a definition from Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, who thinks about love not in a romantic way, but in those deep moments of connection that we feel between two or more human beings. So those could be micro moments when you feel the strong moment of connection between two humans, whether it's think about a hug, this moment when you're hugging someone and you feel that a deep moment of something happening in you as a reaction. That may last just a micro moment, but I really appreciate that definition from Barbara Fredrickson on what love is. because that's how relationships get build up over time. It's this accumulation and sum up of those micro moments.
Yeah. So it's like a deep feeling of connection, like I think you mentioned like when you're hugging someone or when you really feel like you connect or you relate. I think those moments. And I like that. I think it's much more different than like being nice for the sake of it or toxic positivity. Because and then it's just like a surface level like kindness. Oh, okay, you just opened or you just said something. Like we can tell it's not true.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, if the person doesn't feel the authenticity, then it doesn't work. So being authentic, it could be very positive, but the authenticity that's behind this positivity is critical, obviously, for relationships to materialize and happen.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, having like authentic relationships and authentic like acts of kindness. And I think this helps us like shift from thinking or seeing love as like a passive emotion to like, as we mentioned, like deep connection. So in the context of learning, you also describe it as an active strategy. So for a parent, an educator, or even like me or as a youth, what is one concrete action we can take this week to practice relational literacy?
Yeah, so one or two things. Let me start with one, which is very easy, is the time. We live in societies where we are rushing from one thing to another, so from one class to another, from one activity to another, and especially if you as teenagers, it just feels like you are always so incredibly busy in our societies. So being present for a friend, being present for a parent. If a teacher could spend time, even a few minutes with you, that would be my call to action. Very simple, just being present for a few moments, uninterrupted, where you listen, you look at the other person in the eyes, you listen to what they have to say, you are there for them, and they are here for you. And it sounds really easy, but again, in our rushed lives, especially as the holidays come about and we are all thinking about holiday shopping list and other things that are happening in our lives at this time, it's easy to forget. But just being there for the other person, showing up to have coffee, to a meeting, to a show, and being there for the other person can be so meaningful.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, like being present and you mentioned like looking in the eye and like being there and like active listening. And I think it feels really good when someone looks in the eye and they're actually listening to what you're saying rather than looking at you and thinking, what am I going to say next? Or she's so boring. So I think having active listening and being present is a wonderful thing and it also makes you feel heard.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Dr. Howe, I had a wonderful time today talking and learning from you. You've shown us so beautifully that the greatest accelerator for learning isn't a new app or a new flash school. It's the unconditional love and presence we offer to ourselves.
Yeah, thank you, Seerat. I mean, the science of relationships shows that if we have strong relationships, we learn, our brain develops faster, we have greater academic success, we have peak performance across multiple areas of performance, including sports, but also other areas. We have also longer lives, better health. I mean, there are lots of beautiful things that come from having nurturing relationships in our lives. And we all know this. Every listener would say, oh, yes, of course. But here's a problem, and the call to action, which I would love to end on, is while we know this, we don't act on it. So I love all your questions about how can we, all of us, act on it and be more relational in this next phase of our journeys.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Howe. And I think all of us want like peak performance and everything. So that's why really good relationships and strong, healthy relationships are important.
Yes.
So thank you, Dr. Howe, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you, Seerat.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every month, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we thank you so much for listening.